Welcome to this video. This is coverage for round 7 of the Sinquefield Cup, currently held in St. Louis, USA. Yeah, let's look at this round's games. Again, a very interesting round. Of course, it is a really great tournament. Okay, everyone is talking about the fantastic run that Caruana is doing, but also in general, it's lots of fighting games and very fun to look at. So really enjoyable to watch this tournament. Let's see what happened in this round. Topalov, Aronian, yeah, two of the tail enders. They both really have a rotten tournament. Let's see what they did in the game. So Queen's Gambit. And Aronian plays with Knight BD7. Interesting choice. He sometimes plays this line. Topalov now comes up with an interesting concept. He plays G3. That's not a very common move, but an interesting move to get a more fighting position. The positions coming from the classical Queen's Gambit, like Bishop G5, or yeah, sometimes Bishop F4 is also played, or the capture. These are sometimes a little bit stale because they have been played so often, and G3 is a little bit of a fresh approach. It sort of plays the Catalan, but with this somewhat unusual placements of those two knights. So it's a little bit of a different flavor within the Catalan, and it's not so much theoretically explored. So interesting way to play. Aronian took Bishop G2, Rook B8. Yeah, Rook B8 is really very straightforward. Black wants to play B5 and keep the pawn. As simple as that. And this gets, yeah, the more annoying with this knight already on C3. Very often B5 is questionable in the Catalan to keep the pawn. But when the knight is already on C3, it gets a little bit more interesting for black, as you very often have this B5, B4 with a tempo, and the knight comes under attack. Yeah, white probably does not want to allow B5, so he plays A4, making sure that the immediate B5 is not possible. Yeah, here there are of course other possibilities, but Aronian played Bishop B4. An interesting choice. See that he already spent a couple of minutes. This is certainly not a position that has been part of both players' preparation much. Yeah, maybe Topalov had this idea briefly explored before, but this is nothing that you would analyze till move 20 or something. So they're basically playing a game now. Yeah, Bishop to B4 is a good move to occupy the weak B4 square. He does not even try to keep the pawn, which would be probably ill-advised anyway. Castles. Yeah, and now the problem is, how does white get the pawn back? There is no clear route to that. The knight on C3 is, for example, just blocking this natural route for the queen to regain the pawn. White is playing knight D2. This is a safe way to get the pawn back. Yeah, knight B6 does not make much sense here. White is able to play F5. So he cannot keep it, but knight D2 relinquishes control over E5. So E5 is possible. And very often in Queen's Gambit type of structures, if black manages to play E5 and get his bishop liberated, the problems are really over for black. And I think this is probably the case here. Black does not have any particular problems. It looks quite active at first for white, but this move is a very good way to continue. Black is using this weak square on B3 and at the same time attacking the queen here on D4. So white has to react, and he really does not have any big choice than exchanging queens. It's not a problem for white, but I mean, black has probably equalized here. Rook takes, Bishop F4, attacking C7. So black plays knight E6, all very logical, and the bishop drop back to E3. Yeah, in this situation here, as we see, both players already have spent substantial time. They were really playing here, not reproducing some prep. Here black maybe could have gone for knight d4. This would have been an interesting choice. yeah, just centralizing the knight and sort of tempt white to take it. Yeah, maybe he would have taken it, not clear to me. Maybe knight d4 was rejected due to ideas like this. I'm not entirely sure. This is a pawn sacrifice, something like this. Black is very much behind in development. This can easily scare you. Something like this, for example, white is threatening mate and threatens the knight. So the only move is bishop e6. And yeah, this is, for me, not clear. Even this type of position is not totally clear, as white has some pressure here on the pawns. Maybe Aronian rejected the knight d4 idea due to a line like that, where he is very much behind in development. Otherwise, this looks like a fine move, knight d4. The capture is certainly not worrying black too much. We see something similar in the game. He played a6, you know, just removing the pawn from on a7 from the attack. Knight e5 played. So this is a little bit of a repetition. And now I think Topalov should definitely put something on the d file. Rook fd1 probably. Taking control over the d4 square. However, he played rook fc1. And here, yeah, Aronian took the chance to play knight d4. This is a somewhat better version of the thing from before. I see even a6 is inserted. Yeah, what should white do now? Topalov decided to take it, but after that it's pretty clear that black is taking over the course of the game. However, by now it's a bit tricky. This is a threat. So rook c1 was probably just not precise. If you need to take now, the whole thing is certainly good for black. Yeah, we see this b3, c6. Black is just enjoying the bishop pair, and this bishop is sitting nicely on the dark squares, while this is not really doing much. However, it gets very mysterious now. Bishop e6, and now, I mean, h3 is also maybe questionable, but here Topalov played e3, and here it's really amazing that Aronian now played rook to d8. He just went back, while he could have played rook d3, and it's really mysterious why he didn't do that. It's just attacking the c3 knight, which needs to move, so probably knight a2 to attack the b4 bishop, and then you just take b3 and are pawn up for really not much. It's a really mysterious moment. I really don't know what Aronian was afraid of. It looks very straightforward. The comp also gives black just a pawn plus. So I really don't know. It's mysterious. Of course, they are both not in great shape at this tournament. It also, I read that Aronian has some health problems. Maybe I read that he had some sort of medical thing done to him. I don't know, some operation. I don't know what it was exactly. Nothing very threatening or anything, but something that very much will distract you. Okay, well, anyway, this was a strange spot, as black could, with rook d3, probably gotten a very big advantage. He just retreated, and now the worst is over. White gets his knight to d4, and black still enjoys a good position because he controls most of the queen side, the b4 square and so on. It's easier for black to play, but it's nothing as threatening as before. We had an interesting moment later here. Here Aronian found a very nice move, rook to b5. Funny move. After the capture here, black just has a good position due to the fork here. Very nice. So white couldn't take, and now he could go to b4. And here this structure is basically kept till the end of the game. They shuffled a bit here. And here they went for a repetition to draw. In fact, the final position, it is absolutely not necessary for black to accept this draw and this repetition. Black is still better here. He has chances to grind white further with the queen side being under pressure. I guess that maybe the tournament situation that is simply not good for Aronian, and yeah, maybe if he's really not 100% top shape from a physical point of view, then maybe his decision is influenced by that. I think this is, for example, a position if you give this to Carlsen and there is nothing special going on, like a draw is good enough to secure the World Championship or whatever, then he will definitely play this on till tomorrow morning and try to grind out a win. But it's not like Black wins or something, but he could definitely have tried on. Okay, they played a draw, both suffering in this event. The next game to look at is Carlsen Nakamura. Yeah, modern classic in a way. And the weird thing is that Nakamura never managed to win a game against Carlsen, even though he had some great positions. So it's 11-0 favor of Carlsen before the game. Yeah, we have a Slav defense, and Carlsen played knight c3. Yeah, here Nakamura captured on c4. That's an interesting sideline. Yeah, I still think it should be called a sideline. It's not a very common line to play, but interesting for Black. One reason why Black is going for this after all is, let's say you want to play the classical Slav, this Slav accepted in a way where you take, and you here don't like to face the move e3, where white is keeping the pawn, then you need to make a choice. You can take here on move 3, which is Nakamura's choice, to get a more accepted classical Slav feeling in the position, or you need to play here something entirely different, like e6 or g6, a6, whatever, but a totally different position. So d takes c is very often an interesting choice for players who want to play the classical Slav but don't want to study those sidelines. The point is that after a move like this, e4 is also possible. Black is temporarily keeping the pawn, really possible. And now after a4, b4, knight e4, yeah, there's also knight a2 and so on. But this is the main line. He plays this this funny move. Yeah, it's a very strange looking line if you have never seen it before. Back to d2. Yeah, white is moving again the knight, but he wants to get the pawn back. Yeah, black pushes, and now white returns to b1. Very funny position. But the simple fact is, if white gets the pawn back, he is at the pawn down a moment. At the moment, if he gets it back without any serious thing happening, then he will be better due to the pawn structure and to the probable lead in development that he will be taking when he takes on c3 with the knight. So, for example, if black plays a move like that, yeah, I'm going to take queen somewhere, I don't know, maybe here, bishop d2, and here white will be better. The c6 pawn is just a weakness, and white will gain even more time with possible moves of the knight. Okay, black could maybe just retreat, but how attractive is that? Yeah, or just bishop d2, rook c1. The c pawn here is just weak on c6. So it's all about a concrete justification of black's play. Yeah, queen c2 again wants to get it back. Yeah, here in this position the most common move is knight a6, which has decent results for black. But it wasn't played by Nakamura. He played e5, and he played it after relatively quick thought. So this is a different idea, and certainly interesting. Carlsen replied knight f3, and here Nakamura sank into deep thought, which is interesting because this is very near what is theoretically well explored. So it's not that we are talking about a totally new position or a great new concept. What he probably should do here is to take on d4, which is probably not super attractive, but the consequence of e5. Something like this probably, and then play this position. However, this looks better for white. I mean, there's no doubt that white is slightly better here. But it seems that he needs to do something like that. What he played after about 20 minutes is knight a6. And to be honest, maybe he confused those lines. I really don't know. The big problem is after knight a6, problem is the wrong word. I mean, black is just losing here, almost. Carlsen now took on e5 with the knight. And the problem is that while it looks like black has some tactical chances here based on this diagonal, there simply is nothing. Maybe Nakamura made some tactical misjudgment here. Problem is, you play knight b4. What else is there? I mean, white is going for this or queen b3 to attack f7. You need to be quick. He went knight b4, queen b3, and now we have the mate threat on f7. It's or almost mate, yeah. Take on f7, take on f8, winning. So black really has to react to that. What should he do? He played bishop e6. We will look at this soon, but there is no other move really. What's the alternative? Something like, let's say, queen d5. Yeah, queen d5, bishop c4. This is not maybe 100% clear. White can also just take or take on c3. It's both very good. This is not helping. Knight h6. Okay, I just take this, and white is a pawn up here. He's basically having a great position and an extra pawn. So this cannot be it. So bishop e6 was played, and now bishop c4. And, I mean, this is just winning for white. There is really no way around it. He went c2, Nakamura did. If he takes, white can also take with the knight. Little detail, attacking the queen. Yeah, something like this here is not helping. I mean,
check.
The white king in the middle is no problem. It's probably black's king who is less safe. I went c2. And now Carlsen just took on e6. I started to watch the game around here, and I thought that also knight d2 or knight c3 was fine, and it seems to be. This was my choice, being a wimp as usual, trying to keep it safe. But even this seems to just win. Something like that, for example. You can easily afford stuff like that. There is no attack. Yeah, but this was played by Carlsen. He allowed this double check, but it's really no big deal, as white has all the threats here on the king. Black must play something like this. Takes, and he took on e6. Yeah, if he takes here, then this is also overwhelming. Hangs, so queen b7, or all kinds of attacks. Rook d1. It's just not a pretty sight. And here, a little point, the knight is threatening this decisive entry into black's position, which means that black really does not have a big choice. He needs to play with queen d5 to trade queens, otherwise he even would get mated. But okay, takes, and now knight e4. Yeah, this is something that a good technical player like Carlsen, of course, will win relatively easily. The only thing that white needs to do is to be careful to pick up the c2 pawn at the right moment. If we do a count here, white had 6 pawns, black's got 5 pawns, and the c2 pawn, which will be lost, so it's essentially 2 pawns. White only needs to be, as mentioned, careful that he picks it up under the right circumstances. Rook d2, rook c1 makes lots of sense. Takes, knight b4, yeah, covering it for the moment, but we only need to reposition the knight or exchange the knight on b4 to get the pawn. So he's maneuvering this knight to e1, and now f4. Little detail, but important. If you take here, black will play knight d3 and take on e5. It's still excellent for white, but there is no reason to give up this pawn chain, this advanced pawn is valuable. You can just pick up c2 one move later and not give it up at all. Yeah, we have Nakamura continuing. Knight takes f4 is a little trick, but it is not really worrying white too much.
Check.
After this, yeah, one of those pawns will get lost, and it is the pawn here on the c file. Yeah, a rook endgame where black is 2 pawns down. He's got the a pawn, but this is at the moment securely blockaded, and 5 against 2 is too much. White basically just needs to push the pawns, and this is easy work for the world champion. Yeah, here rook d7 f7 is the mating idea.
Check.
Which forced Nakamura to go back.
Check.
And here, this is just the easiest, transposing to the king and pawn endgame, where white is well within the square of the pawn. They played on for a moment, but here Nakamura resigned. I think it's a good thing, even for those top players, to continue some moves to really show why it is lost. Here it gets very apparent to almost all spectators where black is resigning. This pawn is going away, and black can never take on e4, as f6 is promoting the pawn to a new queen. So white will just pick up the pawn and then return with the king all the way here to support his pawns. Yeah, a nice win for Carlsen. Very effortless game. If you look at the clock times, they start with 90 minutes here and an increment. So if we look at this, look at the clock times. Yeah, Carlsen is playing just quickly. Yeah, he's just spending 1 or 2 minutes for each move. It is relatively simple, but yeah, okay, he's only spending about half an hour for the first 40 moves, and then he gets 30 around here he gets 30 additional minutes, and he basically spent like an hour or something on the game, and it wasn't very difficult. A bit mysterious, this knight a6 in this moment, where knight takes e5, bishop c4 is almost winning for white. It's really everything else would be an understatement. Yeah, so Carlsen with another win against Nakamura, who really cannot handle Carlsen. I really don't know what this is. I mean, it sometimes happens, but this is one of the worst scores that is known, I think, in top level chess. There have been some comparable things in the past. For example, a Latvian or long-time Spanish grandmaster Alexei Shirov. He played Kasparov in tons of games, really, and he never managed to win one game. He lost a ton, but never won a single game. I think maybe the difference in playing strength of those players with Shirov in his prime was probably comparable. Still, he should have won 1 or 2 games maybe against Kasparov, but he never managed. So yeah, Carlsen with the +1 score. He's out of the biggest slump. +1 does not sound brilliant for the world champion, but this is still a 2,840 performance, so nothing, nothing terrible. And he will have, of course, next round the game against Caruana to, if he wins it, to sort of get some revenge for the for the first turn. Okay, now we look at the most interesting game maybe of the round. How does Caruana do this time? He has got 6 out of 6 and now plays black against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, who is not in a great shape in this tournament. That's pretty clear, but still with white, not an easy opponent. Let's see. We have the Queen's Gambit declined with Bishop e7. That's a somewhat surprising choice. Caruana, I think if I read this correctly, later stated that he didn't expect 1d4, but knight f3 type of opening. Yeah, interesting. Caruana is a very flexible player. He plays normally rather dynamic openings like the Grünfeld, something a bit more aggressive, but he can also play those kind of solid lines as we have here. Bishop e7 is a little move order wrinkle. Knight f6 being the traditional move. However, after this, there's always the exchange variation, which continues to score very nicely for white. And lots of black players do want to avoid this type of exchange and play bishop e7. I myself play this line quite often as black, especially if I don't mind to have a somewhat dull position. I mean, sometimes you just want to have a simple to play game, and I like to play the Queen's Gambit declined in this case if I have a good opponent and I'm fine with a solid position. Yeah, bishop e7, and now white plays bishop f4. Interesting. The normal move here is knight f3, knight f6, and then white has this typical choice, bishop here or bishop to f4. And this bishop f4 is a very well-known line. In the game, we get something very comparable. Bishop f4, knight f6, e3, castles, now rook c1 and knight d7. Yeah, so white has substituted the move knight f3 with rook c1. Very interesting. What is the point? There are some points behind that, especially concerning what black exactly is playing now after a move like c5. This is what Vachier-Lagrave played. There is a very comparable position in the other line, but there the knight is still on f3 and the rook is on a1. And in this position, the other position, there is knight h5 because this diagonal is blocked, which is not possible here. So black is lacking this idea of playing knight to h5, which would exchange this bishop on f4. Little move order idea here by white. Yeah, Caruana just played knight e4 here. This is a new idea, in fact. The whole position is not very well known, but knight e4 is a new idea. It was also possible to just play c6 and continue with b6 and a5 as it is done in the other line. But black has forfeited the option of playing knight h5. Knight e4, however, is interesting, just jumping right into the middle of the board. If white now takes, d takes, this is not very threatening for black. There are even ideas to play a quick e5. For example, if white now goes this, then besides ideas like normal ideas like c6 and b6 or knight f65, there's also a move like this, which might lead to interesting play. Yeah, like this is clearly good for black. Oh, sorry, this was a bit much. So probably this capture, and after this is an interesting position. The pawn here on e5 is not particularly strong, and this could be explored from the black side. Yeah, like taking on d1.
Check.
And rook e8, not clear at all. This pawn is not easily defended. Yeah, there are some interesting ideas, but Maxime just played bishop d3. Yeah, f5 played, going into a stonewall type of position, fortifying the knight. There was also this funny possibility, taking, rook takes, and e5. This was pointed out by the engine to me, and it has a very funny idea. If white now takes like this, there is the strange looking move b6, and this is quite interesting. As you can see, if white takes, there is bishop b4, and we suddenly win the exchange. Very weird motif. And if white plays b4, we play a5. And this is somehow crumbling for white. The weak dark squares and the strange position of the rook is fatal. So, fatal, white is not losing, but this is definitely an interesting position for black. So this would have been interesting, but is a very computerish line, admittedly. f5 is okay, of course. knight f3, c6. Yeah, at this moment, there also was the idea to play g5, which looks a bit crazy, but it needs to be examined after bishop g3, f4. A very greedy option. After the game, Caruana said that he remembered that this idea was existing here. Maybe he had looked at this line at some point. And he thought that it was very risky, which is probably true. White can do something like that. He has no way to save the bishop, but if we look at this position, maybe this can be improved upon, but definitely White has a dangerous attack here. Black is lacking 2 pawns, and he has this kind of very open kingside structure. Yeah, rook f7 maybe. And then we have a ton of ideas as White. I can play here, drop the bishop back, queen d3. Looks very risky to play. He just went with c6, playing solid stuff. Yeah, White played knight e5. This is a really normal move, occupying this weak e5 square. The whole structure does not seem to be very problematic to me for Black, as he can relatively quickly exchange the pieces that can occupy e5 quickly. Like here, bishop f6, got this straight in. And here, MVL played knight e2. Yeah, probably a good typical idea. White cannot play something like f4. Yeah, there's queen h4.
Check.
It's therefore very hard to prevent the move e5. And if Black gets to play e5 in this structure, he certainly is okay. White here had an interesting idea, and this was prepared by knight e2. e5, of course, very logical. And now Vachier-Lagrave played queen a4. And this ultimately turns out to be a mistake. Yeah, it was funny. Kasparov posted a tweet where he questioned the move, and he said, I would like to ask the White player what the idea behind the move was. He would have thought that White should simply take on e5, so probably something like this, just take here and put the knight on d4 with about equal maybe. Yeah, he asked why this was played, and it was funny that Maxime Vachier-Lagrave later answered to the tweet. These are the beauties of some social media nowadays, that you can really have this kind of dialogue going on. Yeah, queen a4. He said that his idea was to play the capture on e5. So let's say Black plays a nothing move, yeah, like this. It does not help much, but this is what he wanted to do. He wanted to place the queen there and then play the move f3. This kind of idea was in his mind. So this makes queen a4 a little bit more understandable. However, he had misjudged at least one reply. Caruana now played queen h4, a very simple idea. Why not just mate the guy? Almost mate. There's d1 left, but attacking f2. Instead, he also had queen g6, which would have been very interesting and maybe even stronger. One point is that after castles, there is the move f4, which goes straight for the throat and also entails an additional tactical idea. After this, for example, Black has, knight takes c5. Funny idea, also based on the fact that this queen on a4 is not well placed. Something like this is just netting Black an important pawn. Queen g6 was maybe even stronger than queen h4, but it's clear that also queen h4 was a tempting move. The next move by Vachier-Lagrave really leads into huge trouble. If he now would have castled, it all wouldn't have been that bad. In this tweet to Kasparov, he said that he had, of course, considered queen h4, and after castles, he then suddenly recognized the move knight to f6, which sets up this pin on the 4th rank. So White cannot take on e5 and is now faced with the prospect that Black will shove his central pawn forward. And he said that he probably very much overestimated black's chances here, which I do understand. I mean, it's easy to see that black will play e4, possibly g5, f4, this kind of aggressive moves, and it's not clear what white's counterplay is as the queen side is closed. However, if white plays a relatively normal move here, let's say, not sure, queen back or queen here. Now queen to c2 is weird, but or let's say let's move this. If black decides to close this here, white has this idea. This is what I wanted to show. That gives him some counterplay, and really black's advance here is not that quick in the making. If he just pushes with g5, for example, white can also return if he wants and then use the f pawn as a defense. Yeah, like this, and you're not going to get mated here. Black is okay, definitely, but it was probably very much overestimated by Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Yeah, he played the very ugly looking move g3, after which of course queen g4 was replied, and now we see that white already is in quite substantial trouble. The move queen f3 is very annoying, and you basically never can take the knight on e4. This knight is so strong and it cannot be expelled with f3. If white would take, black gets an enormous position, yeah, with a huge initiative, yeah, something like this, yeah, with bishop g4 in the making. Yeah, white is terribly placed here. And, very difficult now to defend. The computer suggests the move knight to g1. This is actually a move that I was also thinking of when I saw the broadcast. Like, okay, if it does not lose immediately, then maybe you need to play this to cover your weak squares. But here f4 is just very strong. I'm actually confusing my notes. It's knight g1 and move later. Rook f1 was played. I'm sorry. Rook f1 was played. Knight g5 and here knight g1. This is the spot. I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong move here. Knight g1. This was where I was looking at the position and thought, okay, maybe you need to play this ugly move to prevent knight f3 from coming. But still, with f4, black retains a very dangerous position. Yeah, something like this takes. Note this, very important. White takes, and now black can take this intermediate pawn here in a way with check. Yeah, and here black is in excellent shape. We have equal material, 6 pawns, but white has this immensely ugly structure. Still, this would have been better than the game. In the game, he went king to d2, and here
check.
Black just simply collected this pawn and went back. No? It's just like, okay, let's take the pawn, and I have a good position anyway. White's king is running around, and white has no play at all. This is just excellent. Yeah, he tried queen a5, and here you have multiple ideas. I think what Caruana played was a very good practical choice. He could have played more complicated here, but queen e7 is simply good. The idea is that if white intends to invade here with the queen, you simply always have this retreat available to exchange queens, and you're just a pawn up with a great position. So a good move, queen g5 takes, and now he first went to e7. Looking at here, and bound to capture later. Yeah, so black has a clearly better position, and he has won the h pawn. So very nice. Yeah, this is probably not defensible anyway, but after the next move b3, black will get a really immediately winning position. If you want, you can treat this as a little exercise, black to play and win. Okay, going to tell you the move now. It's b6. That's very strong. It immediately opens up the position on the white king and has the point that white needs to capture. What else is there? Then there is c5. And this is very nice. It clears the way for the c pawn. And the knight now is really in a difficult spot. Where should it go? Yeah, he played knight to b5. What else is there? And then bishop b7 was the point. Yeah, black is now covering the rook. So he does actually threaten to take on b6 and maybe also take on a2 later. But also, in addition, he's threatening to play d4, which just wins the rook in the corner. And this is a bit too much. White decided to take there, allowing this d4 move. Yeah, it does not look good, but there was nothing better. Takes, and first you can take here, and then grab the rook. Yeah, if white now would recapture, yeah, he didn't do that, but if he recaptures, there's at least the simple queen e4, picking up this rook in the corner. So rook takes c5,
check,
and queen e4. Yeah, black is really just a rook up. But yeah, white was in time trouble, and he just decided to continue.
Check.
Trying to do something with his pawns, but black could simplify here and took on d4 here. Here maybe rook takes a7 was even a bit simpler, but it's black is a rook up here, so he has multiple ways to win. He took on d4, rook c7. Yeah, it continued for a while,
check.
but here. Yeah, a funny move, a5. Yeah, black can also take the queen, but he decided to first give up those checks and only then take the queen. After king a6, you can capture here and here. And really that's it. I mean, b6 to b7 just drops the rest of the material. So it really is true. Caruana is 7-0 in this event. 7 consecutive wins, which is probably a record. It's been discussed on Twitter and in various forums if there was a comparable performance before, like 7 wins in a row against this type of opposition. Probably there wasn't. There was, of course, there is this famous Bobby Fischer run in the 1970s where he won in 1970, 1971. And only 71, I think he won like more than 20 games consecutively. This was where he won the last games of the Interzonal. Then he won 6-0 against Taimanov and 6-0 against Bent Larsen, which is of course an absolutely out of this world result. But it's not quite comparable as it was reached or it was achieved over a course of month. And here we have 7 wins in 8 days, which is probably a record. There was Karpov with 6 out of 6 in Linares 1994, but this is the only thing that really comes close to this. We will have a big game tonight. Caruana playing white against Carlsen, and I'm very, very curious about this game, and very much look forward to see what's going to happen there. Carlsen really with a win as black could somehow repair this tournament, let's say. Getting at least an even score against Caruana and lifting himself to somewhat more bearable distance to Caruana's score. I mean, Caruana is leading by 3 points. He's got 7 out of 7, Carlsen with 4 out of 7. So a win would somehow help to heal some wounds, I guess. But it's with black not easy to do. And maybe Caruana really has a chance to get to 8 out of 8 if Carlsen is doing it in too risky fashion. You never know what's going to happen. So a very interesting matchup tonight. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I hope you as well, and I definitely will cover this round in my channel. Yeah, let's hope we get a good game. Thanks for watching.